All right. So today what we want to do is we want to do questions like these, where you have one of the three ratios given, sine, cos or tan, and you have to find the other ratios. या फिर कुछ थोड़ा सा डिफरेंट वहां पे फॉर एग्जांपल cos x है तो आपको tan of 90 minus x अगर फाइंड करना है. हाउ डू यू डू दैट? ठीक है, आज हम इस पे फोकस करेंगे. पहले शुरू में जस्ट वन थिंग दैट आई मिस्ड देयर, ये जो इक्वेशंस है इस तरह की जहां पे थीटा और एक्स की जगह पे कुछ और आ जाता है, they can also be in terms of रेडियंस में भी हो सकते हैं. और रेडियंस वाले थोड़े से ज्यादा कॉम्प्लिकेटेड होते हैं बिकॉज वो फिगर आउट करना कि कोई एंगल इंटरवल में है या नहीं है वो थोड़ा कॉम्प्लिकेटेड हो जाता है. तो आपने ये क्वेश्चन जरूर प्रैक्टिस करने हैं. आपने ये वाले क्वेश्चन जरूर प्रैक्टिस करने हैं जहां पे इस तरह के एंगल्स आ रहे हो, थीटा प्लस समथिंग, थीटा माइनस समथिंग, और एंगल डिग्रीज के बजाय रेडियंस में हो. ऑलराइट, इस तरह के क्वेश्चन और प्रैक्टिस जरूर करना है. Now let's start with some of those questions then. Some of you asked about them in one of our earlier classes as well. Let's start with this. Okay, let's start with a simple one first. This is question number 43 from the worksheet. It's a 3-mark question. Normally इसी तरह के आते हैं, 1 mark, 2 marks के parts होते हैं. Question number 43 from the worksheet. Now what you have here is you have one of the three ratios given. In this case, sine of x equals cos of x equals p. That is given. And you need to find sine x from that and tan x from that. ये दो चीजें figure out करनी है. Now, one possibility is that you use the identities that you know. That's one possibility. Cos x is equal to p. You need to find sine x. How do you connect sine and cos? Sine square x plus cos square x equals or is identical to 1. Right? Now, if cos of x was p, you can write here that sine square x plus cos of x is p, so that means cos square x would be p square. So this equals p, and sine square x therefore becomes 1 minus p square. And now since you are looking for sine x, not sine square x, you take square root on both sides, and that gives you square root of 1 minus p square. But be careful here, whenever you take square root you also have plus minus. So now you need to decide whether you put the plus sign there or the minus sign there. How are you going to figure that out? In the question it says it's an acute angle. Acute angle का क्या मतलब है? कौन सा quadrant है? It's the first quadrant. What do you know about sine in the first quadrant? Is it positive or negative? It's positive, so you only consider the positive angle here, and you say sine of x should equal square root of 1 minus p square. Make sense? Any problem with this? In this second part it says find tan of x. Find tan of x. Now how do we do this? Tan of x equals sine x over cos x. You know sine x now, that's square root of 1 minus p square. Cos x is p, so tan is just going to be this, square root of 1 minus p square divided by p. Square root is only on the numerator here, not on the denominator. This is what it looks like. Make sense? Any problem with this? No? Now the third part says find tan of 90 minus x. Now this is something that we haven't done yet. Okay. So let me first introduce you to some more identities which you should know about, which are not given in the formula sheet. Okay. यहाँ तक clear है? इसमें क्या मसला? अच्छा, we've got another set of identities and they're called complementary angle identities. Complementary angle identities. Does anyone know what complementary angles are? Complementary angles are two angles which have their sum equal to 90. Sum 90 होता है तो वो complementary angles होते हैं. Supplementary angles are when the sum is 180. Okay. So these are two angles जिनका sum 90 होता है. इनको हम कहते हैं complementary angles. Now there are two identities that you should have done in O levels जो हैं sine of 90 minus theta that equals किया हुआ आप लोगों ने sine of 90 minus theta equals cos theta. Cos of 90 minus theta equals sin theta. याद आ रहा है कुछ? नहीं? 180 वाली भी होती थी, 90 वाली भी होती थी. अच्छा, ये नहीं किया हुआ? Okay. अच्छा, so we've got these two identities. You should know about them now. Sine of 90 minus theta equals cos theta. Cos of 90 minus theta equals sin theta. We've got one identity for tan as well. Tan of 90 minus theta equals 1 over tan theta. All right. These are called complementary angle identities. We could write them in radians as well. Radians में क्या होंगे ये? Sine of pi over 2 minus theta, that equals cos theta. Cos of pi over 2 minus theta, that equals sin theta. And tan of pi over 2 minus theta equals 1 over tan theta. Is that all right? जब आपको वो पता है डिग्रीज वाली तो रेडियंस वाली तो खुद लग सकता है ना. ये तीन आपको आनी चाहिए. You need to know them. Make sense? 90 degrees is pi over 2 radians. Right? तो वो तो आप फिर खुद ही से लिख सकते हैं बाकी तीनों. तो ये आपके पहले ये तीनों आनी चाहिए. So these are important. Now where are they coming from? They're pretty straightforward. Let's say we've got this triangle. It's a right angle triangle. If this angle is theta, what about this angle? Degrees में it should be 90 minus theta. This angle is 90 minus theta. All right. Now, let's say this side is A, this is B, and this is C. Okay, these are the three sides that we have, A, B, and C. Now, what about sine, or in fact, let's start with cos first. What about cos of theta? Cos theta क्या आएगा? Theta के adjacent side, that's B over the hypotenuse, which is C, that's B over C. Now, if I had to calculate sine of 90 minus theta, what about that? 90 के opposite angle is, opposite side is B, that divided by hypotenuse, that's B over C. So sine of 90 minus theta is the same as cos of theta. Does that make sense? No? Cos of theta theta के साथ वाली side is B divided by hypotenuse, that's C, B over C आ गया. If you had to find sine of 90 minus theta, sine of this angle, ये जो ऊपर वाला angle है, उसका sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Opposite side is B, hypotenuse is C, that is also B over C. So they are both equal. Make sense? Similarly, if you had to find cos of 90 minus theta, cos of 90 minus theta, cos is adjacent over hypotenuse. 90 minus theta के साथ वाली side is A, hypotenuse is C, that is A over C. Isn't that the same as sine theta? Sine opposite over hypotenuse, that's also A over C. So cos of 90 minus theta is the same as sine of theta. All right? Then what about tan? Tan of 90 minus theta, what is that equal to? Opposite over adjacent. 90 minus theta के opposite side is B. Adjacent is A. So this is B over A. What about tan theta? Theta opposite side is A. Adjacent is B. That is A over B. So how can you connect the two? They are reciprocal of each other. Tan of 90 minus theta equals 1 over tan theta from this. They're both reciprocals of each other. This is a right angle triangle, so you can basically figure out all of these three identities. Is that all right? Any questions on this? No? Now you need to remember these three identities. Okay, these are important. They're not given in the formula sheet. You should know them. All right? इसके बगैर भी हम कर सकते हैं, but they're going to be really helpful, so I would really recommend that you memorize them. ये आगे जाके भी use होंगी कुछ जगह पे. ठीक है? Horia, can you please close the door? Thank you. Now let's go back here. What was the last part? Find tan of 90 minus x. Part 3. Tan of 90 minus x. What is that? That's 1 over tan x. Right? We just did that. Tan of 90 minus x is the same as 1 over tan x. What does that become? Reciprocal of this, which is p over square root of 1 minus p squared. That's tan of 90 minus x. Any questions on this? No? This is one way to do this using identities. A lot of times it will work, but not for all the parts. There's another method that we will need to use sometimes. So if there are no questions on this, we can move on to that. Can we? All right, let's discuss another method. Another method is that for any such problem that you get, where you have one ratio given, you make a right angle triangle. And you think about the whole situation using that triangle. Okay. Now, how is that going to work? We are given that cos of x equals p. Cos of x equals p. Let's make a right angle triangle. It would look something like this. cos is equal to P. What that means is the ratio of base and hypotenuse, what's that? That's equal to P. Cos कैसे defined होता है? Base over hypotenuse या adjacent over hypotenuse, right? That's what cos is. So the ratio of base and hypotenuse is equal to P. If we say that the base is equal to P, if the base is equal to P, what should hypotenuse be? Hypotenuse should be 1. If the base is P, hypotenuse is 1. So we can write P as P over 1. Can we do that? And from that, what we get is base is equal to P and hypotenuse is equal to 1. So you've got a right angle triangle like this, in which the hypotenuse is 1 and the base is P. And this angle is X here. Yes. We just said cos is defined as base over hypotenuse. Okay. You're given that cos is equal to P. If we say that base is P, what would hypotenuse be? That would be 1 because the ratio is P. Okay. अगर नीचे कुछ में नहीं लिखा उधर 1 लगा सकते हैं ना डिनोमिनेटर में. P को हम P over 1 लग सकते हैं. Right? Then if you compare the two, if the base is equal to P, hypotenuse should be 1. Now, can we find the perpendicular using this? Let me actually write down the whole thing. That's a confusion now letters में. This is base over hypotenuse. So we are basically getting that base equals P here and the hypotenuse equals 1 in this case. What about the perpendicular? Can we find that? It's a right angle triangle. We can use Pythagoras and use that to find this perpendicular. Perpendicular square plus base square should equal the hypotenuse square. We know the base is P. Hypotenuse is 1. So what is perpendicular? Perpendicular is 1 minus P square ka square root. You know this third side now, that is 1 minus P square ka square root. Is that all right? Any questions on this? Any problems? No? So what we do is we make a right angle triangle, and now since we have all three sides, we know the base is, what was the base? Base was P. This is perpendicular, this is hypotenuse. We know all three sides. We can write down sine of this and also write down tan of this, just looking at this triangle. So first part में इसने क्या पूछा है? First part में इसने पूछा है find the sine of x. What's sine of x? It's perpendicular over the hypotenuse, right? What does that give you? Square root of 1 minus P square divided by the hypotenuse. What's that? That's just 1. So you just get square root of 1 minus P square from this. That is sine of x. And that's exactly what you got using those identities there as well. So this is square root of 1 minus P square. ये clear है सबको? Next we had to write down tan. What is tan? Tan x is perpendicular over the base. What's the perpendicular on that diagram? Square root of 1 minus P square divided by P. That is your tan x. All right. And the third thing was find tan of 90 minus x. What about this now? ये इस triangle से कैसे करें? It's the upper angle there. If this angle is x, the angle at the top there, this would be 90 minus x. So basically उसने उस एंगल का tan पूछा है. This angle is 90 minus x. We just need to find the tan of that angle now. Tan of that angle would be the side opposite to that, which is p, divided by the side adjacent to that, which is 1 minus p square का square root. So tan of 90 minus x therefore becomes p over square root of 1 minus p square. And that's all three parts done. Yes. Yeah, we'll see them. अभी करेंगे उसके बाद. Is this all right? No questions? Yes. What if the angle is not acute? So we'll see some examples of that. ये clear है सबको? All right. Acha, before I actually move on, because I'll be using this again and again now, how many of you prefer, so there are two terminologies that we use, base, perpendicular, and opposite and adjacent. How many of you are more comfortable or have learned trigonometry using opposite and adjacent? Okay. And how many of you learned it using perpendicular and base? Okay. All right. ठीक है. So most of you do it using opposite and adjacent. All right. ठीक. या जो perpendicular define ही ऐसे करते हैं ना कि उस angle की जो opposite side है that is perpendicular, but then when you say opposite, yeah, yeah, okay, yeah. So we in our times mostly used to learn it using perpendicular and base, और वो एक वो याद होता था उससे याद कर, some people have वाले से याद उससे याद करते थे ना तो उस वजह से वो it was perpendicular and base. हाँ, so that sounds weird, right? So okay, तो this is, yeah. That's much nicer, right? So that's the reason. अर्श, लाइबा एंड महर, आप लोगों की तो ब्रेक हो चुकी है. आप लोगों को तो ब्रेक की जरूरत नहीं है. आपकी तो क्लास पे शुरू से ब्रेक चल रही है, तो आपको तो ब्रेक नहीं चाहिए. ओके, ओके, लेट्स डू अनदर वन नाउ. ये क्वेश्चन नंबर 43 था. इसी तरह के कुछ और प्रॉब्लम्स देखते हैं. अच्छा, now you've got radians. Let's try this. Question number 18 from the worksheet. इसमें radians आ गया. 18. All right, so now we have an acute angle x radians, and that is such that tan of x equals k, where k is a positive constant, expressed in terms of k, tan of pi minus x, tan of pi over 2 minus x, and sine x. Now, this is something that we don't know, tan of pi minus x, right? इसकी भी identity होती है, but that will be too much memorization in that case. I'll write them down. आपके पास 180 minus x वाली भी identities होती हैं, 180 plus x वाली भी होती हैं, 360 minus x वाली भी होती हैं, but they all come from that concept of quadrants. Quadrant से ही आ रही होती हैं सारी. Okay, तो अगर आप quadrant सही तरह से समझ लें, ये आप खुद से figure out कर सकेंगे. Okay, I'll list down all of those identities as well at the end, लेकिन वो optional होंगी. अगर किसी को याद करना आसान लगता है ज़्यादा तो they can memorize them, but otherwise you can just do it without those identities as well. Let's see how this is going to work. Tan of x equals k. Let's write that down here first. Tan x equals k. How is tan defined? Opposite over adjacent. That is how tan is defined. All right. Now, if we say the opposite side, the side opposite x is k, what about the adjacent? We can say that's 1. Denominator में कुछ भी नहीं है, उसकी जगह 1 डाल सकते हैं. So now we have in the right angle triangle, opposite equal to k, adjacent equal to 1. Can we find the hypotenuse? Hypotenuse square equals adjacent square plus opposite square. So hypotenuse square equals 1 square plus k square, and hypotenuse is going to be equal to 1 plus k square ka square root. This is what we get. So now we've got all the information in the triangle that we might need. आपने इस तरह की प्रॉब्लम में सबसे पहले क्या करना है, ये ट्रायंगल की सारी साइड्स फिगर आउट कर लेनी है. You might not need them in the first part, but eventually in some part you are going to need all of that. So एक दफा आपने सब चीजें फिगर आउट कर ली. Okay, this is how the triangle looks like. Now, angle x is an acute angle. Which quadrant it's going to be? It's going to be the first quadrant. So it might look something like this. If we draw these quadrants here, first quadrant के अंदर triangle आ रही होगी. This angle here is x, and we know about this triangle that the hypotenuse is 1 plus k square root. The base adjacent, that is 1, and the side opposite the angle is k. Okay, this is how it looks like. Any problem with this? Yes. नहीं, they are not acute. Acute तो होता है 0 से 90 plus 0 से plus 90. Okay. Fourth quadrant में it would be a reflex angle 180 or 360 के दरम्यान में. Okay, so this is what we got. ये आपने सब effort कर ली, वो सारी triangle figure out कर ली. Now let's look at the first part. In the first part it says find tan of pi minus x. Arsh, find tan of pi minus x. Now, what does that mean? It's not anywhere on the figure. It's not in the triangle. Pi minus x का angle किधर होएगा? That's 180 minus x, right? Degrees में. Pi, अगर यहाँ ये 0 है, this is pi over 2. This is pi. So pi minus x angle is going to be in the second quadrant. It's going to be here. वो second quadrant में यहाँ पर आ रहा होएगा. Such that the acute angle here is x. Basic angle यहाँ पे x बन रहा होएगा. और ये angle कितना होएगा? Pi minus x. Does everyone get that? So it's a triangle that's congruent to that first triangle, exactly the same. Base भी वही है, hypotenuse भी वही है, perpendicular भी वही है. Everything is the same, but now it's in the second quadrant. That's all that has changed. All right. इसका अगर आप tan लिखेंगे, आप क्या कहेंगे? It's just opposite over the base. What's opposite in that triangle? K divided by adjacent, which is 1. Tan था ना यार. K over 1. But now, since we are in the second quadrant में tan positive होता है, negative होता है? Tan is negative. So we put a minus sign with that. We say this is going to be minus k. That is tan of pi minus x. Okay. Acute angle same बन रहा है ना? Pi minus x के ऊपर भी जो acute angle, जो basic angle बन रहा है उस quadrant के अंदर, that is still x. Basic angle x बन रहा है वहाँ पे. इसका मतलब triangle तो वही होगी, उसके sides वही होंगी. But since now we are in the second quadrant, tan is going to be negative. वो minus sign वहाँ पे लगा देंगे. Another way to think about this could have been कि आप ये सोच लें कि राइट साइड पे ये एडजेसेंट साइड +1 थी, लेफ्ट साइड पे जाके इट्स गोइंग टू बिकम -1. एक्स कोऑर्डिनेट नेगेटिव हो जाएगा, वाई कोऑर्डिनेट पॉजिटिव है, तो वो k ओवर -1 होगा और रिजल्ट आपको -k ही मिलेगा उससे. ओके, एनी प्रॉब्लम विद दिस? नो. So this is all coming from that our very first discussion on trigonometry, जब हमने ये चीज कवर की थी कि आप किसी भी कोऑर्डिनेट के अंदर हो, अगर बेसिक एंगल सेम है तो साइन की वैल्यूज वही आती हैं, कॉस की वैल्यूज वही आती हैं, टैन की वैल्यूज वही आती हैं, अगर बेसिक एंगल सेम है. सिर्फ डिफरेंस क्या होता है? साइन का डिफरेंस होता है, और वो आप देखते हो क्वाड्रेंट से, ASTC से, उससे आप साइन फिगर आउट करते हो, वो प्लस हो गया माइनस होगा. तो यहाँ पे जो ये tan ऑफ पाई माइनस एक्स है, ये सेकंड क्वाड्रेंट में चले गए, लेकिन बेसिक एंगल वही है. तो बेसिक एंगल वही है, तो tan ऑफ एक्स जो था k, यहाँ पे भी tan वही रहेगा, k ही रहेगा, बस क्योंकि सेकंड क्वाड्रेंट में चले गए हैं, वहां पे tan नेगेटिव होता है, वो -k हो गया उस वजह से. मेक सेंस? ओके, लेट्स लुक एट part 2 of this. Find tan of pi over 2 minus x. Tan of pi over 2 minus x. The quickest way here would be to just use that identity, 1 over tan x. 90 minus x, pi over 2 minus x. ये क्या होगी? 1 over tan x. Or you could look at that right angle triangle. If this is x, what about this angle here? This is pi over 2 minus x. तो उसके हिसाब से आप देख लें tan क्या बनता है. Side opposite to that, that's 1. Adjacent to that is k. So it's going to be 1 over k. जो ऊपर वाला एंगल है उसका tan क्या बनेगा? 1 over k. Make sense? तो आप डायरेक्टली भी लिख सकते हैं उस ट्रायंगल को देख के, या फिर आप आइडेंटिटी यूज कर सकते हैं. In either case, you get 1 over k from this because tan was given to be k in the question. So this is 1 over k. Make sense? Any problem with this? No? Let's look at the last part now. Last part says find sine of x. Now this is 2 marks. अब इसके लिए तो मैं सब कुछ किया हुआ है पहले. Sin x find करना है. We already have the length. Perpendicular, opposite, which is k, over hypotenuse, which is 1 plus k square का square root. So you just write that down directly. Remember, these are the sides. This is hypotenuse. This is opposite, and this is adjacent. So opposite over the hypotenuse, that is going to be k over square root of 1 plus k square. That is sine of x. Make sense? Any issues with this? No? Let's have a short break. We resume at 2 o'clock sharp, okay? Not according to that clock. It's 1:56 right now. We have 4 minutes, okay? No, I'll do that. हमसे नॉमिनेशंस बस मांगते हैं, उसके बाद तो फिर वो नॉर्मली फुल टाइम टीचर्स कर रहे होते हैं ना, विजिटिंग का नहीं करते. All right, let's resume. Let's do a couple of more questions. Okay, let's do a couple of more questions from the worksheet. Saturday. फिर event है? How many of you are going to that event? Okay. Is this the last one now? जो आपने 3 weeks कहा था? You can submit late until Monday. Okay. हम कल ग्राफ्स करेंगे इंशाल्लाह. नहीं, कल हमें प्रैक्टिस करनी है. अगर आपके क्वेश्चंस होंगे, अगर आपके क्वेश्चंस नहीं होंगे तो हम ग्राफ्स कर लेंगे. ओके. फ्राइडे को कौन कौन नहीं होगा यहाँ पे? ओके, व्हाट विल डू इज वी विल डू ग्राफ्स टुमारो देन, और फिर फ्राइडे और सैटरडे को हम प्रैक्टिस क्वेश्चंस करेंगे. ओके. सैटरडे को वी शुड बी डन विद दिस टॉपिक इंशाल्लाह. We need to do as much of P3 as we can. So most likely complex numbers रह जाएगा इन पे, and maybe one or two more other topics. कोशिश करेंगे जितना ज़्यादा maximum कर सकें कर लें. हमने भी functions नहीं किया ना. Function differentiation integration काफ़ी रहता है अभी. P1 trigonometry. Now then we start P3 trigonometry. और कौन सी क्वेश्चन है इसके ऊपर? ये हमने कर लिया 43. ओके, 46. लेट्स ट्राई दिस. क्वेश्चन नंबर 46 देखते हैं. All right, let's do this. The reflex angle theta is such that cos of theta equals k, where k is between 0 and 1. Does that tell you anything? 0 and 1 के दरम्यान में? It's positive. Cos की जो value है, it is positive. So k is a positive number. 1 से बड़ा तो वैसे ही cos नहीं हो सकता. 0 से बड़ा इसका मतलब है it's positive. Now we need to find an expression in terms of k for sine theta and tan theta. You can use identities or you can use the right angle triangle, whatever you prefer, that's okay. But you just have to be careful with their signs के positive होंगे या negative होंगे. Alright, उस पे थोड़ा सा ध्यान रखना. We know two things. Cos is positive, that's one thing, and it's a reflex angle. Which quadrant is that going to be? Reflex का क्या मतलब होता है? Reflex is an angle between 180 and 360. Okay. 0 to 90 is acute, 90 to 180 is obtuse, 180 to 360 is reflex. All right. That means it's either the third or the fourth quadrant, but cos is positive. That is only the fourth out of these two. Cos positive first or second में होता है, और third or fourth में हो सकते हैं हम सिर्फ. तो मैंने क्या कहा, cos positive कहाँ पे होता है? नहीं, cos positive होता है first और fourth में, और आप third or fourth में हो सकते हो sir. So the only possibility that you're left with is the fourth quadrant. So you know for sure this is the quadrant that the angle theta is in. ठीक है, ये पता चल गया. अब आप देख लें, cos is equal to k. You can either use identities, find sine. Sine की वैल्यू क्या लिखेंगे, पॉजिटिव है नेगेटिव? साइन थीटा क्या होगा, नेगेटिव होगा. फोर्थ क्वाड्रेंट में साइन नेगेटिव होता है. टैन भी नेगेटिव होता है, टैन की भी जो वैल्यू आएगी एंड पे वो नेगेटिव आएगी. आप आइडेंटिटीज यूज कर लें या वो ट्राइंगल यूज कर लें, दैट्स योर चॉइस. If you were to use the triangle, use a right angle triangle, how is cos defined? It's adjacent over the hypotenuse. Adjacent over the hypotenuse. Now, if adjacent was k, what would be the hypotenuse? 1. So you know adjacent, you know hypotenuse. What about the opposite? Opposite square plus k square equals 1 square. So the side that's opposite to the angle, that turns out to be 1 minus k square and then square root of that. Is that okay? We've got all three sides now. Adjacent is k, hypotenuse is 1, and opposite is square root of 1 minus k squared. Just write them down here. Adjacent is k, and the hypotenuse is 1. No, no, it's not necessary. You can write them down directly as well, and that'll be okay. Okay, part A of this now. You need to find sine of theta. How is sine defined? Opposite over the hypotenuse. Which is the opposite side? Square root of 1 minus k squared divided by the hypotenuse, which is just 1, or you can just leave that. Since we are in the fourth quadrant, sine is negative there, we put a negative sign. So this is minus square root of 1 minus k squared. ठीक है, साइन की वैल्यू नेगेटिव है इसलिए हमने यहाँ पे माइनस लगा दिया. Now the second part says, part B says, find tan theta. What's tan theta? Opposite over adjacent. What's opposite here? Opposite is square root of 1 minus k square divided by adjacent, which is k. And now since we are in the fourth quadrant, this is supposed to be negative. So this is what your tan theta is. ठीक है, ये दो चीजें आपको फिगर आउट करनी थी यहाँ पे. Any problem? Let's look at the last part now. Part 2 of this. अगर आप आइडेंटिटी से भी करेंगे, साइन का ध्यान रखना है, एंड पे जब स्क्वायर रूट लेंगे, you have to put the negative sign with sign. Okay, पॉजिटिव नहीं डालेंगे उसके साथ because fourth quadrant के अंदर है. Let's look at the last part. Now, the last part says, explain why sine 2 theta is negative for k between 0 and 1. Why is sine 2 theta negative? Why is sine 2 theta negative? Theta is in the fourth quadrant. Why would sine of 2 theta be negative? Because sine is negative. Sine theta negative है ना. Sine of 2 theta का तो नहीं पता हमें. Sine of 2 theta क्या होएगा? Yes, Maria. It's in the third quadrant. 2 theta would be in the third quadrant. Either the third or the fourth quadrant. देखें थीटा आपका अभी कहां पर है? फोर्थ क्वाड्रेंट के अंदर. What's the range for theta? It's between 270 degrees and 360 degrees. इसके दरम्यान में है ना, थर्ड क्वाड्रेंट के फोर्थ क्वाड्रेंट के अंदर. Now what about 2 theta? Multiply this whole thing by 2. 270 by 2, 270 multiplied by 2 is 540. 360 into 2 is 720. Now which quadrants can this 2 theta be in? You go one full circle, that's 360, 450, 540. This is 540. And then you got 720 here. So it could be either the third quadrant or the fourth quadrant. So 2 theta जो है, 2 theta is either in the third or the fourth quadrant. Now, what does that mean? Sine is negative in both these quadrants. Sine first और second में positive होता है, third और fourth में negative होएगा. So we say since 2 theta is in the third or the fourth quadrant and sine is negative in the third and fourth quadrant, that means that sine 2 theta is negative. Yes, Anna. But then what would you say? Why is sine negative? Even if you write the range, how do you say sine is negative? So in order to say that sine is negative, you have to say that this is either in the third or the fourth quadrant. That's why sine is negative. थीटा फोर्थ क्वाड्रेंट पे है ना, उसने cos of theta बताया, cos theta is positive. We don't know about cos of 2 theta. Cos of 2 theta तो positive भी हो सकता है, negative भी हो सकता है. Cos of theta positive है. थीटा का मतलब है कोई एंगल आप सपोज कर ले, let's say 300 degrees. So cos of 300 is positive, but cos of 600 that's actually negative. अगर 300 के बजाय कुछ और होता, 330 होता, तो cos of 330 पॉजिटिव है, उसका डबल भी पॉजिटिव होगा बिकॉज ऑफ फोर्थ क्वाड्रेंट में चला जाता है. तो वो तो डिपेंड करता है 2 थीटा किस क्वाड्रेंट में होगा. इज दैट ऑल राइट? एनी प्रॉब्लम्स? अच्छा, नाउ वी गॉट सम ऑप्शनल आइडेंटिटीज which if you want to memorize, it might help you in some 1 mark question somewhere. आप ट्रायंगल की बजाय वो आइडेंटिटी यूज कर सकते हैं. I'll just list them down because you will see people using them. तो आपने इंटिमिडेट नहीं होना उनसे कि ये तो हमें आती नहीं है. You can do everything without them, without those identities. ठीक है? So let me just tell you about them. These are optional identities. Now there's a bunch of them. For the second quadrant, for instance, सबसे पहले हम second quadrant देखते हैं. If we have an angle theta here, theta is the basic angle. What is this angle? This is 180 minus theta, right? दोनों क्वाड्रेंट में मैंने थीटा एंगल बनाया, बेसिक एंगल. जो सेकंड वाला एंगल बनेगा, दिस वुड बी, सो दिस इज थीटा एंड दिस इज 180 माइनस थीटा. बेसिक एंगल दोनों में सेम है. ओके, इससे हमारे पास ये आइडेंटिटीज आती हैं. साइन ऑफ 180 माइनस थीटा, ये जो सेकंड क्वाड्रेंट वाला एंगल है, क्योंकि बेसिक एंगल उसमें सेम है, इसकी वैल्यू किसके इक्वल होनी चाहिए? साइन ऑफ थीटा के इक्वल. ओके, दिस इज इक्वल टू साइन थीटा. क्योंकि साइन पॉजिटिव होता है सेकंड क्वाड्रेंट में भी, ये पॉजिटिव ही रहेगा. ओके, then you have cos of 180 minus theta. Again, the basic angle is the same as theta, so this is the same as cos of theta, but with a negative sign because cos is negative in the second quadrant. Then the third, then tan of 180 minus theta, that is going to be minus tan theta. These are 3 identities that we have for 180 minus theta. Does that make sense? इसी को आप रेडियंस में भी लिख सकते हैं. पाई माइनस थीटा for all of them, right? That's also possible. Let me just write them down here. So you could also have pi instead of 180 degrees. Okay, ये सेकेंड क्वाड्रेंट में आपके पास आ गई. इसी तरह से if we go in the third quadrant में what is this going to look like? If this angle is theta, तो ये एंगल यहाँ पे क्या बन रहा होता है? 180 plus theta. The basic angle is theta, right? Let's write down these identities. Sine of 180 plus theta, that is equal to minus sin theta, because यहाँ पे sin जो है नेगेटिव होता है थर्ड क्वाड्रेंट के अंदर. Cos of 180 plus theta, that is minus cos of theta, because cos is also negative. And then tan of 180 plus theta, that is plus tan theta, because in third quadrant tan is positive. And you can have all of these identities for radians as well, and they look like this. Sine of pi plus theta, cos of pi plus theta, and tan of pi plus theta. You've got these now. These are the identities that we've got for the third quadrant. Okay, 180 plus theta जब आ रहा होगा तो उसमें आपके साइन इस तरह से चेंज हो जाएंगे, प्लस माइनस आपने क्वाड्रेंट से देख के लगाना है यहाँ पे. ठीक है. Then the last set for the fourth quadrant. Done? Okay. Let's look at the fourth quadrant now. अच्छा, fourth quadrant में क्या आएगा? You'll have this basic angle. ये पूरा एंगल क्या बन रहा होगा? 360 minus theta, right? So the identities that you have for this are sine of 360 minus theta, that equals minus sine theta. Cos of 360 minus theta is cos theta, and tan of 360 minus theta equals minus tan theta. You've got the same identities for radians as well. 360 की जगह पे क्या आ जाएगा? 2 pi. Instead of 360, we write, sorry, instead of 360 here, we write 2 pi. And these are the identities that we have for the fourth quadrant. But that's not it. एक मिनट बस. फोर्थ क्वाड्रेंट में एक तो ये आइडेंटिटीज आ रही हैं. फोर्थ क्वाड्रेंट के अंदर भी आप एक और सेट ऑफ आइडेंटिटीज पे लिख सकते हो, और वो आपको पता होनी चाहिए. ये बाद में रेलेवेंट होंगी. हम एंड पे एक और कुछ और टॉपिक्स करेंगे कॉम्प्लेक्स नंबर्स में जाके. विल कम बैक टू दीज आइडेंटिटीज. आप यहां से नेगेटिव साइड पे भी तो जा सकते हैं इस तरह से, नेगेटिव डायरेक्शन में. वहां से आपके पास आता है cos of minus theta equals cos theta. Let's write them in the same order. Sine of minus theta equals minus sine theta, and tan of minus theta is minus tan theta. ये आपको पता होनी चाहिए, स्पेशली द फर्स्ट टू ऑफ देम, साइन और कॉस वाली. Sine of minus theta is minus sine theta. Cos of minus theta is cos theta. Okay. दोबारा से बता दूं? Okay. एक minute. Can I please have silence just for 1 minute? Where is this angle coming from? Positive side पे तो 360 minus theta है. अगर इसी line पे हम negative side से चले जाएं, clockwise, what would this angle be? Negative theta. So sine of minus theta is minus sine theta because we're in the fourth quadrant. Fourth quadrant के अंदर sine negative होता है. Cos of minus theta is the same as cos theta because fourth quadrant में cos positive था, इसलिए वो प्लस आ गया वहां पे. tan के लिए दोबारा से नेगेटिव आ गया. ये आइडेंटिटीज पता होनी चाहिए. ये जो तीन मैंने लिखी हैं ये बाद में काम आएंगी. ट्रिग्नोमेट्री के अंदर एक छोटी सी चीज है वहां, कॉम्प्लेक्स नंबर्स के अंदर. But all of these other identities that we have done, these are optional. If you want to memorize them, you can. Otherwise, they are not required by the syllabus. Okay. All right. सब लोग आज प्रेजेंट लग रहे हैं मुझे. Anyone who's absent? Anyone recall anyone?